All right, guys. This is another video from Soft White Underbelly, and I'm curious to watch it. Somebody after I watched the last Soft White Underbelly video, which is really bizarre. People I used to watch more of it. It's all like that weird. So apparently they talk to a lot of people that like very interesting situations. And I think I saw it was referenced in a Patrick CC video too. So I'm curious. Let's watch. It's called Transgender Woman Interview Jake. So I guess they're a man, right? Okay. Let me mute the alerts. Did I hear about the what?
Mahogany XD super chatted $1.99. Did you hear about the Boyna Band stuff?
No, I don't even know what that is. You can send me something if you want.
All right, Jake. Jake, where'd you grow up? Where are you from originally?
Hey, Jake, where are you
I'm
from?
a suburb of Chicago, northwest suburbs. I'm from a town called Wakanda. So,
What?
Tell me about your family growing up. You had mom and dad?
That's in Chicago? I didn't know that Wakanda was in Chicago. I thought it was in like a different country.
Mom and dad growing up.
Server's restarting.
I thought everything was normal that was kind of going on. I realized when I was like 13, 15 that everything I had been experiencing when I was young was anything but normal. I grew up. My dad was an angry guy. He was pretty secretive. He actually had a fake LLC for insurance sales, but our house was custom made, and the crawl space was actually converted into grow rooms. And this was the '90s. It was for weed, so weed was still pretty illegal. And
I think weed was actually fully illegal.
So that's kind of what he did under the table for work. I didn't find that out till I was about 15 or so. And my dad was also a pedophile growing up.
Jesus! Wow. Okay. We kind of jumped right into that one. I was not expecting that to be well, I guess at least he was only a pedophile growing up, and then he stopped being one afterwards, I guess. Oh, Jesus. I'm just a tasteless joke, sorry. Okay.
He's a sadist. He's he likes children, and
That's horrible.
I saw the bad end of that.
He was convicted?
No, not that I know of. My dad's not convicted. My dad got away. He's still out there. I confronted him about all this about a few years ago, and he admitted to it all over camera. Actually, he leaned in the camera. He kind of didn't confirm nor deny at first, and I know a little bit about how these people work, so I had my phone rolling, and I kept on pushing my accusations at him, calling him a pedophile, and eventually he leaned in the camera and he said, "And so what? Get over it." That's what I did.
That's horrible. Did he ever? I mean, it's a horrible question. Did he ever touches him? That's terrible.
And that's that. I gave it to the authorities, and they launched an investigation. But
well, that's
I guess
good.
The authorities, we know how that goes, So
yeah.
So your childhood,
unfortunately,
went in what direction?
My childhood was, it was good and bad. I hear of some people's childhoods they didn't have food on the table. Constant beatings and neglect. That wasn't really my childhood. My mother was around somewhat. My dad was around somewhat. And in the day, in the light, what people saw.
I wonder if people are I don't think this would be the intention of the video, but I wonder if people are going to trying to extrapolate that the fact that the dad was like a pedophile has something to do with why this person I thought they were trans in some capacity.
I was a well taken care of kid.
Obviously, I just don't want people to start to lock onto transphobic ideas. That's possible that confused this guy, but
and I'm thankful for that. I never went hungry. I wasn't beat for no reason. But in the dark, my dad was getting a hold of me and doing some really, really just pure evil. I don't have any words for it other than this was pure evil. This was even.
Honestly, I think that getting beaten would have been better. Because they were saying they're like, I had food on the table and I didn't get beaten, but I feel like this is worse. I think I'd rather get beaten. I'd definitely rather get beaten than assaulted, especially by a family member like that. That's horrible.
Past pedophilia and having sex with a child. This was sexual child torture.
Damn.
Dilating me, making fun of me.
What the fuck? Wait, hold on a second. Dilating him? Dilating is to open something, right? That's horrible. Dilating your eyes when they open up, make or become wider, larger, or more open. Jesus Christ.
Having sex with me. My dad had a friend too, who
oh my God.
They would take me off to I think hotel rooms or maybe it was the guy's house, and strip me down, beat me, humiliate me, pinch me, and penetrate me. And yeah, my mom eventually, obviously, my mom eventually found out. I had repressed a lot of these memories till I was in my teen years, and what opened them back up for me, I remember growing up, I always had such a hard time going to the bathroom. It hurt really bad going to the bathroom. And my mom found out about this, and she hated my dad. We all kind of hated my dad, but we had to live with him. So yeah, the abuse kind of stopped around the age of 8 or 9 from my recollection, and I think my mom had threatened to call the police on what he was doing, and that put an end to it. From there,
So it started at what age?
as far back as my memories go, I remember he was doing wrong things. I would assume from infancy, but I have a 2-year-old in my life. He's almost 3, and I know what was going on when I was 2 or 3. I remember quite a bit from being a kid. So it went on for quite some time. I can even remember not visual recordings, but they would take audio recordings of me getting raped and
Jesus.
just screaming bloody murder, man, in these audio recordings. And I'd actually.
Does that mean that he has watched them and he rewatched them at some point? Because that's got to be be reliving like a horrific experience, man. Jesus.
They bit one of these pedophiles on the side of the face while I was getting molested once, and I think my punishment for that is my dad took one of these audio recordings of me getting raped, and he sat me down and he had me listen to them when I was just 4 or 5 years old. And
what the
I grew up
fuck?
hunting and stuff. It sounded like someone was killing a rabbit over this audio recording, just gurgling, screaming. And I remember my dad looking at me and laughing, and I brought him the recording and I set it on his desk. I was just a scared kid. I didn't know what was going on. He looked at me and he kind of laughed and he says, "You don't like listening to that, do you?"
Dude,
I
what
like to
the
play
fuck?
with those voice recording tapes. I know if I talked into it, I could play it back, but it was an old school visual recording thing, so you could play it in reverse too, and it would kind of sound like weird sort of demonic things, So my dad had given me these audio recordings of me getting raped by grown men. And the first time I listened to it, my little kid brain, I guess I was an intelligent kid, I said, well, it must be in reverse because this just sounds like gurgling. And I would play it both ways, and it still kind of sounded the same. That's some of the harshest memories that I have. And I don't have any understanding. I guess sadism. He was a sadist. He liked hurting people, and he liked watching all that. So.
You had siblings?
Yeah, I had an older sister.
What's fucked up?
Yeah.
This whole.
From my memories,
what's really fucked up is this whole thing is fucked. But he said it stopped around 8 or 9, and I wonder if that's because the mom finally put her foot down, or if that's because his attraction stopped at 8 or 9 years old. You know what I mean? It's just fucked. Was their attraction exclusively to molesting and hurting 8 or 9-year-olds? Or people before that age? This shit's fucking horrific, bro.
I know she didn't have. There was some things happening to her too, but I also remember my dad explaining to me that my mom was a lot more protective of my sister than she was of me.
Damn.
So I guess I'm not sure.
Wait, so the mom could have? Are we trying to say that the mom could have protected him and didn't? Is that what's being said? And the mom just kind of didn't do it because she didn't care about him? Is that what we're getting out of this, or is it more complicated than that? Is it some kind of weird situation where the mom had to choose which one or something? I know that sounds like a really weird thing. That's fucking horrible.
I know a lot of bad stuff happened to me, but I actually haven't been in contact with my older sister since about the age of 12, 11. I've only spoken a handful of words to her since then. So the abuse stopped when I was around 9 or 10, and I noticed real quickly that both my parents were being exceptionally nice to me. Whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And I wasn't stupid. I knew what was going on. They were getting ready to have a divorce, and both parties wanted custody of me. Divorce happened when I was 12. And
they were getting ready to have a divorce. The only reason that I'm thinking about that is because when they said that when he was talking about how he was being abused and by the dad, I kind of assumed that the mom was afraid of him. And that there was some kind of a power dynamic thing there where because guys are physically stronger and sometimes, can be domineering over their wives and whatnot to a point where they may not be able to get the choice that they want, which is still quite possible depending on who initiated the divorce. But if she did initiate the divorce, Like, is it that she could have put her foot down, she just didn't care enough? Like, was she afraid of what was going on and trying to protect her kids like the best way she thought she could, or was she just like not caring at all? You know, like that's fucked.
I actually choose to go with my dad. My mom was a really
Wow.
angry woman. She screamed a lot.
What the
She hit
fuck?
sometimes, and
Well, that kind of makes me feel like she just didn't care. Jesus fucking Christ. How bad did the mom have to be for this guy to choose to go with? He said he chose, right?
was a really angry 12. Parties wanted. I actually choose to go with my dad.
What the fuck? Holy shit, dude. This is horrible.
My mom was a really angry woman. She screamed a lot. She hit sometimes, and you know, my sister went with my mom. I chose to go with my dad simply because he was nicer to me, and I had forgotten some of the harsher abuse.
I guess that makes sense.
I remembered
'cause he
having to
was
sleep with
young.
him and stuff, but I didn't remember a lot of the sadist style behavior that came back when I was older and I started having sex with people. And
Wow.
like I said earlier, you know, it came back through me remembering my childhood, and just it hurt so bad to go to the bathroom. And
Dude, this is so. I didn't think this was going to be this heavy. I thought this was just going to be like a detransitioning story that was like, you know, like exploring like the why this person, you know, was trans or felt that they were trans and how they were potentially misdiagnosed. And but this is much more than that.
you know, I thought that was normal. I talked with other people. I talked with some of my girlfriends when I was 17, 18, growing up, and as far as what my childhood was like with my dad, and they told me that's not normal. And it just led to a lot of, you know,
Yeah, for
investigating my
sure,
childhood, and these memories slowly came back. So by that time, I had already found out what drugs were. I grew up playing basketball, so I kept it pretty straight until about the age of 16. You know, I put my frustrations into basketball, and I was really, really good at basketball. I mean, I wasn't a very articulate, high IQ player. Um, I was more the Dennis Rodman, kind of Kevin Garnett. I was a mean basketball player. Um, and yeah, I could dunk the ball at a young age. I'd get a lot of rebounds. And I continued playing through high school, but I had already started using drugs at that point, and they started to take their toll on me.
Yeah, I could imagine.
So yeah, I had met a best friend when I was about 14 or 15, and I already hated my dad at that point. So and I think he knew I hated him. I didn't even stay in my own house at that point. I stayed at their house for most of the time. My basketball uniforms were there. My school clothes were there. Yeah, I called this my friend's mom, you know.
Damn, that's fucked. You know, it's so funny. Like my mother-in-law, like that's my mother-in-law is like that mom. You know what I mean? Where like when they were growing up, everybody was welcome to stay. It didn't like really matter. You never had to ask if they could stay for dinner. They were just kind of there. That's fucked, dude. Like those, like honestly, like those parents that do that kind of shit are fucking like you never know. They could be fucking lifesavers, bro. Like they could really just be fucking lifesavers. Just being like, yeah, you could stay over whenever you want. Because like for a kid, man, it's hard to be like, oh, my mom's beating the fuck out of me. You know what I mean? Like, well, what do you say? Or my dad's abusing me, mom's abusing me. It's hard to like express any of that kind of shit. But if you're just like, yeah, you could just stay here whenever you want, that could provide like a massive safe haven for these kids in like a very horrible, like abusive scenario with one of their parents or both of their parents or, you know, whoever the guardians might be. That shit's fucked, bro. Yeah, literal safe havens where they're not pressuring you, being like, "What happened? What happened? What happened?" Like sometimes, bro, like you just don't not in the headspace. Sometimes you just can't talk about that stuff, or there are times where like you're the victim of horrible abuse, and like this is fucked, but like you're just not ready to talk about it. You can't talk about it. It's not something that you want, you know, and it may not even be productive talk for you to talk about it because that's your choice. When you're ready to talk about this kind of stuff, that's your choice. And sometimes just like, hey, you want like a fresh meal? You want to sleep somewhere where like you don't have to be afraid to get woken up at night in some kind of like a really weird fucked up way? You know, do you want to like you know, do you want to watch TV calmly? These really weird small things, like they could be so profoundly impactful for so many people.
She wasn't my mom, but she called me her son. So I kind of, you know.
And even that, like that sounds so stupid. Like, because to the mom, it's just like fun for like the parent, the safe haven parents. It's like, yeah, you can call me mom or dad. Like it's fun. Like I you know, but for this kid, that could be like, yeah, this person actually loves me. Like, especially with like them not having an understand. Like, how do you understand love at this point? How do you like? You've never been. Imagine like never have been like. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Imagine never learning how to love or how to be loved, and like this is where you're learning it from. Like this person, this other person's like family in some capacity.
Did with that family
I have no idea what I'm
for
supposed to do here.
for most of my upbringing. I went real downhill with drugs after graduating high school. I started shooting heroin. I started smoking crack. I learned the layout of Chicago. I'm not familiar with the south side of Chicago. I'm familiar with the west side of Chicago, Garfield Park, Austin, Cicero, and just learning street life. You know, I was never an addict that went sick. I always kind of, I don't want to say, you know, an intelligent addict, but they are out there. You know, we look at addicts and we think these people are, you know, stupid. And a lot of them are. But for some of these old drug addicts, people that have been in the game for 10, 15 years, the amount of IQ they need to sustain their habit, to not die, to live this street life, they're actually smarter than, in my opinion, they're smarter than a lot of, you know, working class people. It's just, you know, their habits
Well, it's like a survival instinct thing. Sure, I get what he's saying.
and who they are, they choose to use that intelligence in all the wrong way. And that was me in my early 20s. I sold a lot of things, allegedly, and
That hurts, bro. That sucks. That's fucking horrible. Because I know what they're talking about when they say they allegedly sold things. How fucked, bro?
I used a lot of drugs. I stopped using drugs when I was about 26 years old. I'm 29 now, so it's just the negatives started to outweigh the positives. I knew quite a few homeless people. I had friends that started to go to prison for different things. The first time I got clean, I relapsed. Golly, I mean, I tried.
Bro, like honestly, this is like one of those situations where we should like finally start talking about like what prison should be. Like what should prison be? Because imagine that you've gone through like this entire situation where you've been like abused your whole life. There's no way that you were ever going to succeed. You were molested as a child. Your mother didn't care about you. Your father didn't care about you. They laughed at you. They tortured you. You get out and you end up being like developing a horrible drug habit. Imagine all these different things are happening, and like then you go to prison. Like prison should try to evaluate some of these different situations. You know, like that's what it should be for. Like what else? What's the point of prison if it doesn't try to help people, you know, get out of prison, get out of like whatever pipeline they're stuck into? It just doesn't seem particularly productive, you know?
I had to get clean, it seems, you know, 50, 60, 70 times, and every time I relapsed, but I kept on trying.
What the fuck am I supposed to do?
And I got back into working out. I got back into playing pickup basketball, and at this point, I've been sober about, you know, 2.5, 3 years. I don't have an exact date. And there was a relapse about 1.5 years ago with some hydrocodone. They were from a doctor for a surgery, but I didn't need them.
In relationships in your life?
Yeah. Relationships, you know, I had a girlfriend for most of my drug addiction. I grew up with a lot of gender dysphoria too, you know. I was a pretty queer kid growing up until I started getting made fun of it for like the long hair and the ear piercings. So
when they say they grew up with gender dysphoria, I wonder if they're just kind of using that term to communicate that they grew up where they felt like there was some kind of an incongruence with their gender, or if they potentially had diagnosed gender dysphoria. Because this is one of these things, like this says ex-transgender woman, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have gender dysphoria. I know that sounds weird, but I talked to like a therapist who specialized in this. He said sometimes, not all the time, but in some cases, somebody with gender dysphoria, their treatment isn't to transition. Their treatment might be to like maintain their gender. You know, it's really up to going to a therapist and trying to navigate the ways in which, like, you know, what's best for you.
So I pushed that part of me away. I got real tough. I started lifting weights. But the gender dysphoria was always there.
What am I supposed to do here?
I came out as transgender kind of in the midst of my drug addiction. And I had a handful of memories back in my head about my childhood. I just chose not to acknowledge them or really give them any weight as to who I was as a person. Right now, sitting here, I can remember there was a lot of weird stuff going on with my dad. A lot of costumes. I mean, there was a puppy costume, which was naked with a collar.
Oh my God.
There was little girl costumes. There was little boy sailor costumes that I would have to wear when I was with these pedophiles, whether it be my dad or acquaintances, friends of my dad.
Jesus.
So now I kind of attribute that to my gender dysphoria.
I wonder where you could find people like that so that we can go in there with a gun and shoot them all. How fucking horrible, dude. Jesus Christ.
I actually don't have a lot of gender dysphoria at this moment here. I'm happy being a guy.
Well, that's good.
Maybe I'm a little androgynous. Some people say yes, some people say no. But yeah, I came out as transgender when I was 22 or 23. I had a boyfriend. He's a really, really nice, smart guy. I can actually give him some of the credit for getting me sober. I was a drug addict at the time.
Wow.
He was sober. He's an incredibly intelligent guy. And there was times where I would relapse and he would still hang around with me. Even I was having sex with him one night, and another handful of memories kind of came back, and I was pretty
Jesus.
devastated. It led to me, I could no longer have sex with him.
Yeah, of
Just
course.
the act of having sex with another guy as a guy, it was so traumatizing for me. I remember one time I had tried I had been sober for a few weeks, and I had tried having sex with my boyfriend, and
That's horrible. It's so interesting because like there are some instances, and I don't think that these are like all the instances, but there are some instances where people become like gay or straight in some capacity because they have a trauma associated with like that sex or that gender, I guess you would say. You know, and this makes sense. Like this person's dad molested them, so now they literally cannot be attracted to men because it just is incredibly horribly triggering. That's fucking terrible.
really quickly. I mean, we started making out, and I started shaking, and I ran to the toilet. I threw up.
Wow, the fuck.
I threw up a few times. I was shaking. I was sweating, and I started to realize that I'm a pretty traumatized person. The drug addiction, the gender dysphoria, the transgendered stuff. Thank God I was never incredibly sexually promiscuous, and no STDs or anything like that. So I'm really thankful for all that.
Well, that's
But
good.
yeah,
That's good. I mean, like it's like almost like that's just terrible. Because this person obviously was abused, which could definitely lead to an STD. And then on top of that, like they suggested they were engaging in some promiscuous activities for drugs, which I understand. But like that could almost be another, like just in addition to the trauma if they had an STD. It's like I did, and then it's like I did this to myself. I'm like, then they didn't really do that to themselves, you know? Like it's just a fucking horrible set of circumstances.
so I didn't do anything very quickly, but I started to realize that I wasn't transgender. I have a girlfriend now. I'm still friends with my boyfriend from that. He's a really smart, really intelligent guy, and he's been with me from the time I was a drug addict till now, till I'm clean. And so yeah, relationships, I've had them with men, I've had them with women, and yeah, I'm really thankful that I ran into a guy like that could be that patient and stuff. And so yeah, I'm still a traumatized person.
Do you deal with like emotional issues like depression or anger or anxiety, anything like that?
Yeah, I have.
My real question is like, does this person have access to like a therapist, and do they feel like it would be productive to have a therapist? Because that's something that people don't really talk about too much. Is like, therapy can be a really good experience, but sometimes therapy could also be a really bad experience. It really depends on the person. I think generally therapy is really good for almost all people, but there could be instances where maybe it's not super productive. I know it sounds like fucked up, but some people have like really repressed traumatic experiences, and like it would be really positive in the long run to work through them. But sometimes those really negative, like those experiences, when you kind of bring them back to the front, and then you bring them back to the front, and it kind of triggers like everything all over again, and it takes a lot of effort to kind of go back, and because then you have to readdress those, and it could just be really fucked up. So I wonder if they would even feel like it was productive.
I have a bit of depression and anxiety. I don't take any medications for it. I refuse to be on any doctor's medications or anything. I don't use any
What am I
drugs
supposed to
anymore.
do
I'm kind
here?
of a pothead on and off. I do smoke pot. I try to keep it to responsible use. And even if I'm not smoking pot, I usually take edibles before sleep because my dreams are pretty rough. Just some of the dreams
Yeah.
that I have to relive while I'm sleeping. I'd prefer not to remember them when I wake up, and weed can do that for me. So
Makes sense.
yeah, I eat edibles before sleep almost every night because I don't want to remember my dreams.
And the harder drugs that you were doing were what?
Hmm?
What were the harder drugs that you were using?
A lot of opiates, man. Opiate-based painkillers, which kind of led into heroin. I started sniffing at first. I learned how to shoot up, so I was shooting a lot of heroin. Till I was about 22 or 23. Allegedly, supposedly, some people thought I sold a lot of coke. I never really had a taste for coke. I had tried snorting it, I had tried shooting it. It was just not my stuff until one day I had tried smoking it, freebase cocaine, and I actually kind of enjoyed that.
Mm.
And that was where my drug addiction got really bad. I started smoking a lot of crack with the dope. It only lasted for about 6 months until I realized that this isn't sustainable, and it'll take my life. You know, if it doesn't take my life, it'll take my head, and I'll just be left a shell of a person, or I'll go to prison for one thing or another. I had a few friends go to prison for drug-induced homicides and gun charges, and I knew I didn't want that. You know, I was kind of in the world alone. I had my so-called adoptive family, as I call them. They knew I was struggling, not to the extent that that I'm talking about now, but yeah, getting out of it wasn't easy. You know, like I said, it took me 50, 60 tries and constantly
Yeah.
relapsing. But
Yeah, man. Like drug addiction's harsh, bro. Like I don't think really anybody ever kicks drug addiction or really any addiction, but drug addiction's really particularly bad in like one shot. You know?
you know, it took a lot of acknowledging my trauma that I went through as a kid. A lot of meditation, a lot of yoga, and it hasn't been easy. Even these past couple of years, I've had more memories come back of what my dad was doing, and
Jesus.
I'm still sober through it now. I guess I just found healthier ways to deal with it. You know, I play a lot of basketball again in different pickup leagues. I work out. I read just a ton. I'm an avid reader.
Did you try therapy?
I have tried therapy. I've tried not to any real help. I've tried therapists, and I had one rescheduling me a lot. I had another one who was like
Terrible.
really anti-gay, anti-LGBT, and
Jesus Christ. So first of all, I mean, like rescheduling on somebody like that needs therapy. Like, what a fucking why be a therapist if you can't like actually take care of it? It's so weird to me that there are some people who just don't actually care about their job as much as like they should, especially a job that needs to be cared about, like being a therapist in some capacity. You know?
I didn't really feel comfortable being with her. The
Yeah,
best
of course.
therapy that I've had is actually meditation and yoga. I've had a few yoga teachers kind of take me under their wing and guide me through some of my PTSD and my flashbacks, and
Wow.
just breathing, stretching, acknowledging that, you know, I'm a pretty messed up person, and that's all right. There's a lot of messed up people. I mean, there's homeless people that aren't messed up. You know, there's people that are homeless that do drugs that have had normal childhoods, and there's other people that are successful millionaires that have, you know, had childhoods similar to mine. And you know, a lot of us are messed up. Some of us acknowledge it, some of us don't, and you know, it's all right. You know, that for me, that's been the best therapy, is just yoga and meditation. You know,
Do you feel like you were once trans or gay or both, and now you're not, or is it just you're just choosing this
well,
for now?
well, as far as my thoughts on that, I mean, I grew up being bisexual. You know, I've had girlfriends, I've had boyfriends. At this point in life, I'm not sure if I'm only interested in my girlfriend. I'm not interested in other women. I'm a monogamous person. That being said, I'm also not interested in other men. If my girlfriend wasn't around, I still wouldn't be interested in men. I would only be interested in women. And as far as, you know, my gender, I used to be quite a bit more androgynous, quite a bit more feminine looking near the end of my drug addiction, and now I'm not. I mean, I view gender as a spectrum. I mean, you know, and it changes throughout our life, as does our sexuality. So I think for most people, having some sense of androgyny is healthy. I don't know if anybody, if you just want my opinion, I don't know if anybody is transgender or is not transgender. As I said, you know, I think gender is a spectrum. I'm not out here to, you know, to hate on the transgender community or call
It's a very philosophical perspective on gender. I can respect that.
them mentally ill or anything.
It's so interesting because I kind of disagree with what this person is saying. I disagree, but like it's one of those things where this person has had like a profoundly different life experience to me, and so the way that they perceive gender is so much different than the way that like I perceive gender. Like it's just not the same thing. Like you know what I mean? Like it's almost philosophical to them and like exploratory and possibly even beneficial to work through their trauma to have this interpretation of gender, which you know what could be right. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? But I've never had, and I am so fortunate that I've never had this life experience that this person has had to be able to have this understanding of the way that they perceive gender. You know what I mean? This is like a really, it's interesting because I came into this expecting like to have this like really nuanced conversation about gender. in like this really, I guess stern way. And because a lot of times when people talk to detransitioners, it's in a way to be like very transphobic. But this, if anything, has made me personally, I still don't get it, but I get, like added like a level of like kind of understanding to people that have gender dysphoria and like the way that they perceive gender and like how it might help or their personal like experience, if that makes sense,
Um,
yeah, this is eye-opening for
I
sure.
don't think I was pulled into the transgender community and brainwashed by them or anything like that. I don't hold any beliefs like that. So yeah, I view gender as a spectrum. As far as me dealing with some of my issues, I think there was kind of a form of mastery involved with my childhood and my trauma that I went through, and I had a boyfriend, and I read a lot. So I read that when something really, really bad happens to you when you're a kid, two things can happen. You'll either never want to be put in that situation again, you'll be a traumatized person, or as you grow up, you'll try to recreate it and relive it, and you will
Yeah.
probably re-traumatize yourself as a way to master what had happened to you as a kid.
Yeah, sometimes the way that happens, and this is like kind of horrible, is like repeating trends where like people who are abused like become abusers. It's like really fucked up, and then it's like it can potentially be like this really fucked up pipeline, like back and forth, like the way that your trauma manifests itself, and how profoundly negative. Like it's fucking horrible. It's really fucking horrible.
And I see this everywhere I go. I mean, I have more than one friend who's a trans woman who was sexually abused by her father when she was a little boy.
That's crazy. Because like, it's possible. And I don't know, because here's the thing. There's some statistics that show that like there's a higher level of abuse in some capacity associated with being LGBTQ. And there's two different ways to look at that. One way is to look at it as the abuse causes somebody to become like LGBTQ in some capacity. And then there's the way of like people can tell that that child is LGBTQ in some capacity, which leaves them more vulnerable for abuse, right? So like if you see a gay, like you will usually, and not all the time, but you can know when a kid's gay fairly early. At least gay boys, they kind of gravitate towards their mother more feminine stuff. It's just kind of like a thing that happens. And so that could potentially make them easier to pick on or take advantage of in some capacity because they're not like the other boys. They're ostracized a little bit. They're seen as less than by society because they're feminine boys, and like being feminine is wrong, especially for boys, guys. And so, like, I think it's case by case. And then there's instances where, like, you're just gay. You know what I mean? But I think there's instances, I think that, like, it's case by case. I think that there are instances where horrible abuse can manifest itself by making you LGBTQ in some capacity. And sometimes being LGBTQ can cause people, not of no fault of your own, to be targeted by, like, pieces of shit. But either way, I think that the most important thing to understand is that even if people become LGBTQ because of like a very horrific life experience, it doesn't make their identity any less valid. Because that's what transphobic people are saying when they say that somebody who was abused becomes trans. They're just trying to say that it's not valid, but the reality is that like we are shaped by our life experiences. And if you are like violently assaulted by a man, for instance, and it makes it so that like, and let's say you're a woman, and it makes it so that you're gay, like you can't touch a man, that's a valid experience. Why would you need to undo that? Like it's horrible, but it's like you can't just undo that horrible trauma, and it doesn't make that person less valid. And also possibly, I don't know this person, but maybe they associate the fact that like they look at them and then they look at their sister and they go, I as a little boy was molested horribly and abused by my father, but my sister wasn't. If only I was a girl, maybe I wouldn't have been abused. And if that line of thinking invaded their mind and made them have gender dysphoria and identify as a woman, and that made them happier, then like who are we to sit here and go like, no, you need to go back to the association of you being constantly violently raped. Like, who are we to dictate that? Like, people have life experiences that will change them forever. We know this. We know that there are soldiers, for instance, that get PTSD, and we need to help them work through it. But it's not going to change. It's not going to go away. The only thing that you could do is try to be more sensitive as a society to it. You know? It's fucked. This is real fucked, bro. This shit's heavy, man. But yeah, just wanted to make that
They remember
clear.
it. I have another trans woman friend who her mom will swear that the dad was sexually abusing her little boy, who's now a woman. And you know, both of those trans women have a lot of sex, and I'm not even here to bash that. You know, if that's what helps them live and helps them master their trauma, you know, it is what it is. I have no ill feelings in my heart towards anybody other than sadists and pedophiles, you know, so.
I respect that.
My way of dealing with it, I guess there was a form of mastery involved for a bit until I had some memories come back that were so harsh.
I'm not entirely sure what he means by mastery.
I just couldn't be with guys anymore, you know, and then
Wow.
I had a really slow transition kind of back to where I am now. I lift weights, I play basketball, I paint my nails, but I am a guy. I'm happy being a guy, you know, I'm only interested in women. And that's my way of dealing with it.
Are you at the happiest point in your life right now?
The happiest I've ever been? No.
I wonder what that was.
That other family, I had a brother. He passed away 2 years ago, about 1.5 years ago.
I'm assuming that he's referring to like that adopted family of like those people that took him in. This is really sad, dude. I actually might get a little emotional too.
Yeah, my happiest was, just 1 second. Yeah, my happiest was with my brother. So yeah, he was also a drug addict. We saw eye to eye pretty much on everything. I mean, we were brothers. We could finish each other's sentences. He was with me through like the whole transgender stuff too. I remember coming out to him one day. I had started being a little more androgynous, and you know, he always knew. I mean, we had been friends since we were, you know, 13, 14 years old. I told him one day that I think I'm transgender, and he was right in the middle of talking about one of his favorite animes, and I kind of interrupted him and just blurted it out. And he looked at me and he was like, you know, you interrupted me. He didn't care at all. He was just like, we can talk about that later, but I'm talking about this anime right now.
That's some real shit, bro. That's so fucked up, bro. That's so sad. That's so fucking sad, dude. Oh my god. This is horrible. This is actually really upsetting. This is so horrible. Oh my god. This adoptive family that took him in when like his own family was treating him like shit. A family where like his father was violently abusing him to the point, and he still chose to live with the father because somehow the mother was like worse. Like the adopted family like he had a brother, you know what I mean? And then that's so sad, dude. That's so sad. That's so fucked up. I could not even imagine. This is fucked, man. This is some sad shit.
I don't even think we talked about it later,
Yeah.
you know? It was just how it was.
He passed away from an overdose?
Yeah, we kind of got sober together. We each took our own roads. We relapsed separately, but we'd gotten sober together. The only issue was my brother was a drinker. And with the drinking, there was some Xanax involved. If you're familiar with drugs and brain chemistry, drinking and Xanax, they hit the same receptors in the brain. So you can give an alcoholic in withdrawal Xanax and it'll get them right. And conversely, you can give a Xanax addict alcohol and it'll kind of keep them right somewhat, much like heroin to pain pills. And my brother had never really shook that monkey of drinking and Xanax. I never really played around with much Xanax, and I'm not a drinker. I was much more of a hardcore drug addict. And my brother never smoked as much crack as I had smoked.
Wow.
But he always had that monkey on his back, and he started going downhill really bad about a year before he died. I mean, he had tried to quit Xanax cold turkey. He had the seizures. I remember waiting for him to get out of the hospital, and he came out of the hospital, and he was like a different person. I mean, to anybody watching this, if you're going to play with drugs, don't ever play with Xanax. And I always knew that as a young drug addict. You can quit heroin, you can quit crack, you can quit all these things, and for the most part, you'll go back to being the person that you were when you started using drugs. Xanax and meth, those two things are different stories. If you get far into those drugs, you can get sober, but the person that you once were, will, in my opinion, will be gone.
Isn't that fucked though? Like really, what's really so fucked is that like Xanax is a prescription drug. A prescription drug is one of the most addictive substances like that are out there. How fucked up is that? How fucked up is it that like these like the companies kind of got? How fucked is it that these companies like got away with it? You know.
So my brother got out of the hospital, and yeah, he was kind of a different person. He was nervous all the time. He could barely hold a conversation. I tried to be there for him, but he always wanted to be alone. And he had already had one kidney from drinking and drugs. And I knew he was fooling around after he got out of the hospital with Xanax and alcohol and things. And he ended up passing away from he was real drunk one night, and he was playing with a can of air duster. And I guess there's a chemical in air duster, tetrafluorocarbon. It's a very heavy molecule. It displaces oxygen from the lungs. That's how they get their high on different inhalants. It's actually not really a high. It's more so just depriving the brain of oxygen. You can think of the choking game that young boys play in high school, which my brother did play. I never played the choking game. I thought myself above such activities as a young queer kid growing up. So yeah, that's how my brother passed away. I actually saw him pass away.
Jesus.
I was at a neighbor's house hanging out with their kids, and I had gotten a phone call from our dad, his dad. They were on vacation, and he said I should go check up on Steve. I guess my brother had called his parents in kind of a frantic state, and I came back to the house and heard a sound like someone trying to start a car that wouldn't start, I was with the neighbor at the time, and we ran around the corner of the house, and we saw my brother there, and he had a significant amount of brain damage from the oxygen deprivation already. I got into MMA after basketball, so I kind of knew some of the signs of like CPE, and when people get knocked out, he had some of this going on right before he died. He died there once, and then I guess they resuscitated him in the ambulance, and he died again on the way to the hospital.
Yeah.
And it's funny. My brother was also pretty queer growing up, but he was straight. He always had beautiful girlfriends, surprisingly. But we were having a conversation about 2 months before he died, and he actually disclosed to me that there are some things he's never told anybody before, and his family's Mormon. His mom was a convert into the Mormon religion, and Mormons treat converts differently than they do people that are born as Mormon. So my brother, being born as Mormon, would spend a lot of time in this church as a young boy, actually away from his mom. And he told me he was sexually abused by the Mormon, by some of the guys in this Mormon church. And in the town where I grew up, in the suburb of Chicago, there was actually a higher up of a big Mormon collection of churches that's in prison right now for molesting young boys. So I don't like religion. My dad is a Christian. My biological dad is a Christian. He's pretty devout about it too. He's wandered from his faith. And
how could you be a devout Christian and fucking do such a horrible thing to to any child? So fucked up.
He's come back to it. Now he says he's a born again Christian. He speaks to churches about how hard he had it growing up, and I'm the evil, cross-dressing drug addict that's not a Christian. Yeah, so
it's fucked up, dude. This is one of the it's so funny because there are a lot of I have issues with a lot of different stuff. I think that people do. Bro, I have such an issue with forgiveness sometimes. Just a fundamental I think that there are things everybody should be people should be forgiven for. There's always things. But intentionally hurting a child, if all you have to do is repent your sins, and God's like, yeah, you molested a kid, you can come in. Why would you even want to follow that God? You know, that just why would you even want to follow like a god like that?
Um,
Just the way I fucking
you know,
say it. You know?
that's not the case.
What are you afraid of now? What are you worried about?
I'm most worried about myself. I'll never go back to drugs. You know, I'll be honest, it's hard for me to hold a job sometimes. Maybe
Feel
it's
that,
just the
man.
life that I've lived growing up, not working often and doing other things for money that paid a lot better than working. So right
Yeah.
now, I'm most worried about myself as a traumatized person. You know, for traumatized people, we can really be our own worst enemies. I mean, we're in LA right now. I mean, you could look outside and see a lot of people that are indeed their own worst enemy. Um, and I'm
Yeah.
at a point in life where I don't want to be that way. I want to work with myself. I want to work through this. I don't want a normal job. I don't want to just be a worker bee. I want to find a way to help people, or do
Respect
something
that.
meaningful in the world, and that's hard to do. You know, I've volunteered at a lot of women's shelters, like domestic violence homes, since I've gotten sober because sometimes I feel like if my mom had a safe place to go growing up, that it wouldn't have been as bad. Maybe she would have left my dad and not allowed her kids to be in the presence of a sadistic pedophile.
Interesting. That's so interesting. That's so complicated. That's just such a complicated thing he just said. Because before we were taught, I brought up the question of like like why choose the mother over the father over the mother, you know? And it's like an interesting question. And I brought up the fact that like the mother might have been in a situation where she felt like she couldn't leave, because her or her kids might have gotten hurt. But then, you know, she was able to protect the daughter more than the son, which was also another curious thing to me. I was like, well, did she have more of a choice than we're letting on? I don't think that we're ever gonna know. But it sounds like what he's telling us is that like she did feel unsafe being there. Um, and then maybe if there was some kind of a woman's shelter, she would have been able to walk away. Um, and potentially protect him and, you know, the daughter and herself. But what I find interesting, and I feel like I've heard this before, and I don't understand it. I don't know. It's something I probably never understand. Is that there seems to be an equal amount, if not more, animosity towards the mother for not protecting him than the father for abusing him. And it just seems like such a complicated array of emotions. And like, I just want to know, why do they feel that way? Or do they feel that way? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not even like angry or anything. Like, I just don't get it. I just don't understand it. And I'm never going to. And that's like a privilege that I'm never going to understand that, you know? Because I feel like you'd have to like really live that to understand why, you know? Um, damn, that's crazy. That's just a lot. That's harsh. That's very deep. That's just very deep.
And she tried. I mean, I remember going to stay with her mom, which was my grandma at the time. And as a child, you don't understand. You know, I actually remember saying, I miss my dad, I miss my mom. And my mom
Yeah.
telling me, you know, she's sorry about that, but I shouldn't be around him. And then we
Okay,
would
so
move
she
back into the
tried a
house
little
with
bit.
him, and the abuse would continue because he knew he could get away with it. So yeah, you know, I want a job where I can help people. And, you know, my biggest fears are just as a traumatized person, sometimes I isolate myself. Um, and just working through all this trauma, you know. Yeah, another big fear of mine is I'm afraid of him. I'm um,
Yeah.
I'm still worried that he has some sense of power over me. I even
Yeah.
worry about coming on this podcast. You know, I don't know I, if he's ever going to reach out to me again one day, trying to sue me for defamation or anything. You know, I
Jesus.
believe I already brought it up how I had confronted him over what he had done to me, and he actually leaned into my recording phone as I was confronting him, and he was like, "Yeah, I did what I did to you, and you know, so what? Get over it." Kind of taunting me. Um, you know, he's proud of what he's done deep down. And I, you know, there's just, I know I've watched some of your videos, Mark, as far as getting out of these circles of trauma. And love, understanding, and forgiveness is going to be one of our only ways out. And it's hard for me to find any of those. I definitely don't have any understanding. as to why anybody would want to do something like this to a kid.
Yeah.
My only guess is that it happened to him when he was a boy. And his solution, and it's not a solution, but his solution to make himself feel better is to do it to other little boys.
That's totally possible. But isn't it's so fucked? It's like additionally fucked up because like what this is communicating to me is that like this guy is trying to rationalize how somebody could have done this to anybody, of course himself. You know what I mean? Like you're in that thing. It's like because I don't get it. Like why would you do that? Like there has to be a reason. There has to be a reason. Maybe he's the victim in his own sense. Like it's just what a fucking profoundly traumatic experience.
And I don't understand any of that. I don't have any love for pedophiles, for sadistic people, especially people that are going to go and do this to a child. I just can't fathom. And the last one is forgiveness. You know, there's actually some days where I've gotten really close to forgiving him. I'm sober now. I smoke pot at night. And maybe I'm not sober because there's been a couple instances where I've tried psilocybin mushrooms in small doses. And I can remember about a year ago, after my brother had passed, I'd taken a small dose of psilocybin mushrooms. And I started with my yoga practice and meditation. I was going to journal some, play guitar, draw. And as these mushrooms kicked in, I felt sorry for my dad, like really sorry. I mean, I started crying because in that moment, I couldn't fathom what it was like to be him. I felt really bad for him. I mean, I was like sobbing by myself. That's how bad I felt for my dad. And if I could have connected with him in that moment, I would have forgiven him. And I would have been worried about the salvation of his soul.
Wow.
I'm in line with a lot of Buddhist principles. So I know it's within me to forgive him, and just because of that little story I told. But it's intermittent, you know, and that's kind of what I'm working on. I'd like to forgive him in a sense, but you know, it's hard when you confront someone that was raping you.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, we can invent a lot of other words for it, child molestation, pedophilia, but the best word for it is he's a child rapist. He rapes children forcibly.
Yeah.
When you confront someone like this and you find out that they enjoy rubbing it in your face, yeah, so what, get over it. It's really hard to forgive him. I've offered to pay for therapy for him and I to go to therapy. He doesn't want anything to do with it. So I guess it's a journey I'm going to have to take on my own.
I wonder if it seems like he's trying really hard to like try to get into a situation where he can forgive his father. I wonder if that has more to do with his father or for him. And not even in like a bad way. Like that's not even me criticizing him in any capacity. But I wonder if like some of the motivation is like for him. I wonder if it's like he needs that. He needs to be able to forgive his father to like move on. You know what I mean? I wonder if that's like the motivation for like really almost desperately trying to get into that situation. And I totally would understand that. I totally would get it. I mean, I wouldn't fully be able to personally understand it because it's just fucking intense, like, you know, beyond, I think, something that I could ever truly empathize with. But like, I get it like enough as I think as like a normal person could, you know?
As far as understanding forgiveness and love.
Because yeah, like he definitely deserves that. I mean, if you're that, if you're that father, you should fucking kill yourself. But man, at the very least, try to do that for your fucking son after ruining their life like that.
Love. And if I can't forgive him and understand it and come out of it with a sense of love, I just don't want to live my life with hate any longer because it really inhibits a lot of what I want to do. You said, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid of living my life as a hateful person. And I'm not where I want to be. I do have a lot of hate in my heart towards
of course, yeah.
Towards pedophiles, towards these types of people, towards the politicians that give these people 2 to 3 years in jail and then they get out and do the same thing again. I mean, you can go on the sex offenders registry. There's probably 15 pedophiles within a few miles of me at any point in America. And they're repeat offenders. And I don't want to rile myself up right now, which would be easy to do. But I don't want to live the rest of my life, you know, a hateful person who's consumed by the fact that pedophiles do exist. A lot of times they're treated better than their victims.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, listen, like I'm somebody who's I think that like if you're somebody with the thoughts and you get help before you act on those thoughts, I can be on board with like, you know, helping you manage them. But once you commit the act, I mean, I this is I'm just going to be real with you. I really don't like um I really feel like the we have like the movement, like rehabilitation movement has gone a little too far in some instances. I feel like rehab, like there are some people who simply should not be able to be rehabilitated. Even if they could, they just don't deserve the second chance. I think that if you molest a child, there's no reason not to kill that person or to apply capital punishment to that person. I don't understand it. I mean, you know, I just don't get it. It just seems like such a fucking waste to me.
And yeah, I guess that's one of my biggest fears. So
All right, Jake. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
yeah,
Wow.
thanks for having me, Mark, and thanks for all the work you do. So
I wish you lots of luck with your journey.
thanks.
Thank you very
Wow.
much.
That was an incredible video. That was an incredible video. Jesus Christ. What do you mean pointless murder? What does that mean? Wow. That was heavy, man.
Sarah D super chatted $5. Hey Poppy, you should send a Discord alert out when you go live on YouTube.
I gotta get that set up. Killing them is not going to fix the issue. Why not? Like, it's not about fixing the issue. It's about why should we support somebody who would do something so horrible? Why should we support them with our taxpayer dollars? If you molest a child, why should you be able to get rehabilitated? It's probably not going to work after you've already committed the offense. Anyway, that's what the statistics show from what I've seen. So what's the point of keeping that person alive? You're cool with them being held away from society to be forced to work for taxpayers? Why? That takes away jobs from a taxpayer who's not a fucking child molester. So why not, you know? Everyone deserves a second chance? I disagree. It depends on what it is. There are people who deserve second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh chances. If they do something, oh, I stole from my mom or my dad. Yeah, you could forgive those people. Maybe they rob a store. I can forgive that person. Nobody got hurt. You molest a child? I don't think that you deserve a second chance on anything, ever. Not everybody deserves a second chance. It's just like, it depends on what you do. I mean, I think that we're just like, we have to knock it off with like the niceties. But your best, the best argument you could give me, that's why we shouldn't engage in capital punishment, is that an innocent person has to put somebody else to death, and that could really make them upset, and that could fuck their lives up. That's the only argument that I would ever be like, okay, I get that. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and another special shout out to all my Patreon and Twitch subs. If you'd like to support this channel further than you already have by just watching the video alone, go down in the links below where you can sub on my Patreon, which will allow you to get your name on this beautiful black wall. Or you can go to the Twitch page and you can actually use a free Amazon Prime sub, if you have Amazon Prime, to subscribe. Thank you very much, guys. Take care.